Hi, I'm Ashley Phipps. I spent 10 years working in education as an academic advisor, among other things. I pivoted a little over a year ago into video games. So I've worked on 3 games so far, one that's in development right now as a producer mainly, but on indie teams, you kind of do lots of things. So I've also edited scripts and done a bunch of stuff, made some UI graphics, that sort of thing. I was born and raised in Iowa. I never really thought that I could get into games when I was younger. And so taking the plunge has been really exciting for me now.
How do you make that jump? Like, how did you go from education to straight into gaming? Like, were you into games growing up and that's just kind of how that transferred? Like, how did you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, I have always been into games. I was a Pokemon kid growing up. My dad would take me and my younger brother to LAN parties. Back when those were a thing, we would pack up all of our towers in the back of the car and go play Battlefield 1942 and Unreal Tournament in his friend's basement and eat a bunch of candy and Gatorade and generally be unhealthy but have a blast.
Yeah.
My first degree actually is in art. So I was always really into the art side of things and character design and that sort of thing. But the art that I was good at was not necessarily the type that would like get you into gaming. And so I pivoted into education and got my master's in education because I just really enjoyed when I was on the college campus and working there as a student. And so, I did that professionally for a really long time, and I loved it for a long time. And then when COVID hit, I also had my son March of 2020. So a lot of things changed for me at the same time. My whole college sort of restructured in a way that kind of turned it from a job that I had loved for 4 years into just, it was miserable going in every day. And so after a few more years of that, I just decided I needed to find something different. And games was the thing that I had always loved. I got started streaming on Twitch a few years ago as well, as a way to kind of like get myself back into it and make time to do those things that I enjoyed instead of just always being responsible and doing chores around the house and stuff.
Right.
So when I decided ultimately that I was going to leave my job, it was sort of a slow burn. I decided like 6 months in advance so that I had some time to figure things out. I just kept coming back to games, and I actually applied for a virtual exchange program through the International Game Developers Association Foundation and got into that. And that was essentially a 6-week boot camp on the games industry. And the people that I met there and the things that I learned really kind of thrust me forward, because initially I was thinking that I would do community management, social media management. I had some experience in those areas. But when I learned about production, it really just kind of fit all of the skills that I already had and the things that I enjoyed as well.
What games were you streaming? What were you playing in order to sort of, I guess, build that confidence, I guess you said, back into streaming and doing all that stuff? Because, I mean, it is a lot. I mean, it is, especially trying to build a following and all that good stuff.
I mean, I've jumped around to a lot of different things, but overall, it's been a lot of the more like casual or cozy games. I started with, Animal Crossing because that was so big at that time. I've always been a huge Sims fan, so I always play the Sims. Like at least once a week, I'm doing something in the Sims. I've done some of the newer Pokemon games. I do days occasionally where I just play a bunch of indie demos to kind of spotlight those things, especially since I started making games myself. I know how important that can be for developers. Lately, my biggest obsession has been Final Fantasy XIV. I got into that just this year. And one of my friends got me into it, and I am very slow because I only have a few hours a week to play, but it's been, my current obsession for sure.
Talk a little bit about the games that, have created and, kind of worked in. How do you go about working out the ideas as far as, what you want to write about or what you want to create or just anything of the sort? Like what is it that sort of fuels that creativity for you?
Yeah, well, I think so. It's interesting because the games that I've worked on so far have very much been a team effort. So they weren't necessarily all like my idea from the beginning. the first team that I worked with were folks that I met in that virtual exchange program.
Okay.
We all were in this group called the Velocity cohort, where we had a different career for a certain amount of time, and then we were pivoting into games. And so a lot of people from various backgrounds, and we were all trying to build up our portfolios and that we could do this. And so we created a little indie studio called Distance Over Time Studios, and we worked on 2 different games, one called Guiding Light, which is a sort of adventure game. It's a little bit spooky, but not like horror necessarily, and very narrative focused. But our main goal with that was to make it fully blind accessible. One of our teammates is blind, and he's working on becoming a consultant for accessibility in games. And so we worked really hard on things like sound cues for where objects and walls were in the game, just making it so that somebody could play this little adventure game without being able to see it, but it's still also really fun and a cool game for sighted people too. I've always been very passionate about accessibility. It's just part of my education background. That's something that I really wanted to continue focusing on. Our second game was a visual novel, also blind accessible, very easy to do with just a basic visual novel. We used like the Google voiceover to create lines and things like that, and did a lot of work play testing with blind and low vision users and stuff to make sure that both games would work well that way. So those were my first kind of experience into production. And in fact, in For the Lost, the visual novel, I was the only producer on for that one. The other folks were busy with the holiday season. So then while I was working on those, I met Matt Kandima, and he is the lead for Borderless Translations and Borderless Studios. I met him through the foundation and through other things that I was doing, just kind of networking. And I found out that he had made this little demo for a game jam with a couple other people that was Clock Out at 2. And I actually played that on one of my demo days on stream. And he had asked me for feedback. So I messaged him back and basically said, like, I love it. This really resonates with me and my experiences as like a woman in the working world, and also things that I had heard from coworkers of color and watched them experience. And so I told him I loved it overall, but there was, some typos and things, and I've done a lot of editing in my days. And so I was like, if you just need somebody to go through the script and like do basic editing, I'm happy to do that and help out, And he was like, well, I know you've been doing production, so why don't you just join as a producer? Because we plan on continuing to work on this. And that was a year ago. And now we're working on getting funding. We've been featured in a couple different, we've been featured in one Steam sale and another one coming up. It's kind of cool that we've been able to do so much without having any money yet. Obviously, we need some eventually to kind of get to the finish line, but everybody's just been hustling and doing a fantastic job on it.
How was that push and pull for you? Like, would you rather just be like, you know what, I wish I just had a bucket load of money, make whatever game I want to make? Or is it more of, this is kind of hard, but the process, and like you said, it's not a lot of games that are working on these different accessibility sort of things. So I guess in a way you are sort of around a group that is pioneering a different point of view as far as games are concerned. How to bridge those gaps, but also we want to keep the core of kind of what we do and kind of how we go about it and stuff like that.
I think there are pros and cons, right? That like, it's fantastic that we can literally just make whatever we want, and we can pivot and make changes and, focus on the things we want to focus on. With Clock Out at 2, we started it as kind of a basic visual novel. And as we've gone along, we've added additional features, and, it's turned into this kind of roguelite hybrid game that I think is really exciting. And I don't know that we would have been able to do that if we were, just working for a studio that was established from the beginning, At the same time, money is time, right? So, all of us on the team have day jobs, and I started working full time again back in education just to pay the bills and be able to keep doing these things. But that means that we don't have as much time. Our team meetings are at 9 p.m. my time on, in the evening. Also, some of our team is in Japan, so that's just a time that for us all. Yeah, like having funding and having a publisher and that stability is really attractive too, because that would allow us all to do this as our day job and have all the time that we want to put into it and really make progress. And I think that's the hard thing with being a new kind of coming up indie dev team, is that you just got to do the nights and weekends thing and kind of inch along as you can. And, if your artist gets sick or has like something come up and they're, too busy to work on it for a few weeks, then we all just kind of have to twiddle our thumbs for a little bit or pivot to work on something different. There's certainly pros and cons to both. And especially with the way that the games industry is right now, with all of the layoffs happening and stuff, I'm glad to both have a stable job and be able to work on games in my free time. But I think that ideally it would be great for both of them.
How big is the group of people that you sort of work with? How big is the team as far as like the games you've worked on?
So with Distance Over Time, those games were each about a team of 9 or 10. And it was really just when we went through that program together and we decided we wanted to start making games together to build out our portfolios, we just made a Discord server and it was kind of like, all right, we're going to make something in October for this game jam. Who's free? Who wants to do it? And so that's how Guiding Light came to be. It was just a Halloween game jam. And, we made this little game about the afterlife, and then we continued working on it and put out a patch some months later to kind of polish it up. And so that just happened to be like 9 of us that were free and wanted to work on it, and we just made it work. With Clock Out at 2, our core team is like 6 people. But then we've also had, a couple people who maybe just made a few graphics and then like went on to do other projects, or because our studio head, Mac, has a translation business as well that's well established in Japan. He gets interns and they work both for the translation side, but also sometimes they want to get some games experience. And so we've had interns come and go as well who help either on the programming side, or maybe they make a few animations or do the social media or something like that. So we've had a lot of people come and go, but our core team is really only like 5 or 6.
How do you go about bridging education and gaming? How do you, I guess, work around those? Like, is it sort of an educational element of the gaming, or do you try to keep them separate? Like, how do you go about navigating those two worlds because now they're starting to become more and more intertwined. So how do you see sort of yourself having that teaching experience, but also having that gaming experience, streaming experience? Somebody could learn a lot as far as all the things you've done, as the things that you had hands in helping create and stuff like that. What is sort of your feel as far as moving forward, still being a teacher, still being a gamer and all that good stuff?
It's interesting because while part of my role was teaching, I did teach one class. Most of what I did was more one-on-one work with students. So I started in housing. So I was a hall director for a few years, and then I was doing academic advising. So like helping students pick out their classes and learn how to do better in classes if they're not doing great. And that was in the psychology department. And so I had students who wanted to do all sorts of things. And not typically gaming, but I did, have that conversation every once in a while with students because my office at work is very similar to my office at home. I just have a bunch of stuff that I enjoy, and it always, brought up conversations. I had Pokemon decorations and things like that. And so occasionally we would talk about it. As far as I'm aware, none of my students ever found my stream, which is fine by me. I'm not big enough to be like easily findable or anything like that. I say that streaming pays for my gaming addiction. It really just, pays my Final Fantasy subscription and my Sims expansions, and that's
Are there any games coming up that you're excited for? What games are you sort of looking at to kind of want to work on as far as ideas?
I have a wish list on Steam that's probably over 100 games long at this point. There's so much. There's very few games that I am not excited to try. I'm not good at platformers. It's not my genre. Like I'll play one every once in a while, especially if one of my friends worked on it or something, but I am no good at them. I don't know what it is. The hand-eye coordination is just not there. But I mean, there's so many of these like cute, cozy games coming out. You know, the developer who made Stardew, his new game is getting closer and closer to coming out, Haunted Chocolatier. So I think that'll be really exciting. I don't typically go for horror games, which is funny because all the games I've worked on have been kind of spooky or creepy. But there's a new one that just came out called Dollmare that I just came across, where you're essentially working in a creepy doll factory, and there's like this weird, like maybe the previous person who worked there got turned into a doll, and you're like trying to figure out what's going on. And I saw someone streaming today and I was really intrigued. Yeah, so I mean, I try lots of things. Sometimes my friends are just like, I have friends who also stream. One of them was like, there's this new co-op game called Ale and Tale that is basically a co-op tavern management game. And so she was like, it's like $15, buy it, we're going to play it. And so we did that, four of us together, co-streamed that, and it was a blast. So, you know, I'll try just about anything.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. That's dope. You talked about having a art degree. Stuff like, how does that manifest itself when you're, you know, doing what you do with the gaming aspect?
Well, it's funny because when people have an art degree, they assume that I'm just like this fantastic drawer or painter or something like that. And those were probably my worst. I mean, I was fine at drawing. I got good grades in those classes, but it was like a slog for me. And what I really focused on were photography and fiber art. I did a lot of like weaving and embroidery and fabric design and those sorts of things. What I think that my art degree really gave me was an eye. Like it helped me develop my eye for just like aesthetics and what looks good and what is appealing to people, how to use creativity. I mean, a lot of that is just kind of learning how to get what's in your head down somehow and like into an actual product of some kind. And also editing ability. Like, you know, when you're working on an art piece, one of the hardest things is not going too far, like being like, oh, I'm going to add this and I'm going to add this and it needs this and this and this. And like, so learning how to kind of edit things down to what you're really trying to get across and get the, you know, the message there. I think that that has helped me a lot in all sorts of things, but especially in producing on games, because a lot of my role is hearing everybody's perspectives on what they're doing or what they want to do and helping everyone come to a conclusion of like, all right, well, we can't do all of this. What is our goal, you know, with this game? What is our purpose and how do we find and get the essential elements in there without it just becoming like too much?
That's interesting. Weaving and embroidering and stuff, that's definitely not something people would kind of think about as far as, you know. So does that mean Sims characters, it takes you like 2 hours or something like that?
Oh, yes. My like byline on my resume literally says, among other things, that I am known for spending hours in character creation. Like,
yeah, that sounds about right.
Any character creation element to a game, it will be almost an entire stream when I start.
Yeah, because once you said that, I was like, yeah, I mean, if you play Sims, you could be doing that for a long time.
Yeah, I do a lot of create a sim time in The Sims.
That's cool. What is the nearest future look like for you as far as what you're working on and what you want to kind of get done and stuff like that?
I mean, my main focus right now is clock out at 2. Have been working more on the business side. We've got official contracts. We're an official, you know, LLC now. We're getting the word out there and trying to find, you know, a good match for funding and publishing. I think it's, you know, the message of the game that microaggressions and bad workplace environment really can create actual trauma for people, and exploring that in a game, I think really hasn't been done before. And I'm really excited to like make it happen and get it out into the world. Nice. So that's my main focus right now on Clock Out at 2 and kind of pushing that forward and hopefully finding some good partners on that.
Plug everything you have going on. Does that game have a release date or anything like that?
We don't have a release date yet. Since we don't have our funding, we don't know exactly what the timeline is going to look like, but we do have a Steam page. So you can look up Clock Out at 2 on Steam, and it's there with a trailer and some screenshots and things. And we will have our first demo out. We will have that up on Steam. There is an older demo that is up on itch from the Game Jam when we kind of first started working on it. So, if you are clever, you can find that and like that. But the official demo will be up on Steam. And then I'm Shleedelie on all platforms. So my stream, SHLEEDELIE, word that I made up. Everyone always asks about that. So I stream 2 to 3 nights a week, typically Saturday nights and Wednesday nights, 7:30 Central is my standard time. And then I try to throw a third one in there when I can. I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky and all of those things because I'm all over constantly on Discord and whatnot.